We're going to talk about Broken Promises, your book, and a little bit about you and your background so people will understand that you're a well-qualified man, but you stepped into the world of being a whistleblower. Tell everybody about that.
Yes, well, I retired from the Marine Corps. I'm a combat veteran. I worked for the VA after getting another master's degree in clinical social work. And in 2009, I worked for the Vet Center program, which is part of the Veterans Health Administration. And basically what happened around 2017, they instituted unethical and harmful clinical productivity metrics that were burning out counselors, damaging their welfare, that actually compromised quality care for veterans. And when that occurred, when they failed to respond to our concerns that were brought up about all this, I made a decision that I had to go outside the agency and file grievances with various federal agencies to report these harmful metrics and the impact that it was having negatively on both veterans and the welfare of the counselors that care for them throughout 340 vet centers nationwide.
That's a big step that you had to take, not just in your career, but just your life in general. Never been being a whistleblower before, I would assume.
That's right. It was the first go around. Didn't know what I was getting into exactly.
That's what I was leading to.
Tell you the truth, yeah.
What did it cost you, just real quick, if you can, give the audience an idea of the depth of what a whistleblower has to go through, especially dealing with the VA?
Well, dealing with the VA or any other federal agency, even corporations for that matter, when you speak truth to power, they will do anything to hold on to their narrative, to not be accountable for things that need to be corrected. And so they'll use specific whistleblower tactics, which are intentional, which are malicious, which basically are designed purposely to silence you at any cost, so they don't have to be accountable to fix the problems that you bring up that need to be corrected.
One of the things that I appreciate about you, you were now you're retired now. That's what I was going to mention to everybody, yes. So everybody get understanding. If you want to get more info on Broken Promises, Ted's story, head over to LinkedIn. We're going to be sharing some stuff on the screen in a little bit when our cameras come on. But as a retired Marine, a combat veteran, a former VA Vet Center counselor, you got involved in this ongoing advocacy campaign to protect the quality of mental health and the care for veterans and even the welfare of the counselors. But what was your mental health like going through this process and even now?
Well, I think it's important to first point out kind of what happened in the chronological scheme of things when I reported the issue at hand that we just spoke about. And so basically what happened, I filed these grievances with these federal agencies, the VA Office of Inspector General and so on and so forth. I had initially reached out to counselors in the system when this had fallen on deaf ears, which finally got the attention of people who replied to all when I addressed this to people in VA central office. And they at first shut down my computer to silence me, to stop the dialogue, because everyone was responding to me, how they were agreeing with me and so forth. And so eventually they employed such tactics as gaslighting, mobbing to turn my colleagues against me. Basically, their tactic was trying to paint me as a mentally unstable combat veteran in order to discredit me, and which did not work, because as this whole thing unfolded, basically what happened is I ended up getting local and national interviews, including NBC, Military Times, and NPR. Got the attention of my congressional delegates in Rhode Island, Senator Reid in particular, who was instrumental in getting a federal GAO investigation, which is the Government Accountability Office, to investigate my claims, which ended up validating what I had been complaining about and filing grievances about. And this actually led to congressional legislation a year and a half ago to correct this problem. It got passed by both houses of Congress, and now the focus is to ensure the VA complies with the legislation. So that's kind of the nickel tour summary of what happened in the process. But along the way, having that context, you can better understand in answering your question that the impact it had on me, basically, shutting down my computer, threatening me that the police would be called if I showed up to the vet center, because technically I was still an employee because I took terminal leave in order to take on this cause, figuring I could be more effective in taking this on, being outside the system rather than inside the system. And in so doing, they had, regional assistant directors coming down to the vet center after I was on terminal leave, meeting with people one-on-one, telling them how crazy I was, that it's all in my head, that this isn't true. And in order to turn my colleagues against me and threatening me personally, if I showed up at the vet center, that the police would be called, even though I never threatened anyone or was a danger to anyone at all. And this finally led to 3.5 years into this whistleblowing, where I actually had a no trespass order put against me because of showing up at the vet center in order to drop off a memorial donation to a fallen colleague I worked with at the vet center, who herself was a Vietnam era veteran. And it was her wishes in her obituary, hey, drop off donations, to help veterans getting services here at the vet center. And I so did. The director, who was one of the main proponents of the retaliation against me, Rochelle Fortin, who, by the way, is no longer at the vet center. She left about a year ago, but she ended up putting this no trespass order against me. And she wasn't even there the day I showed up at the vet center. And this was part of the ploy, again, to discredit me, to paint me as being a threat, even though I wasn't. And so she filed a fraudulent claim, a fraudulent police report with the VA police to work with that township to get the no trespassing order. And the long short of it, I hired a legal law firm locally here to get it rescinded, which it finally was, but it cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And I ended up having Whistleblowers of America, who I'm now on the board of directors with, to put up a GoFundMe page for me in order to recoup my legal expenses because of all this. And that's still ongoing on the side at the same time. So the impact of all this, because of the level of betrayal, because of the moral injury involved, was actually for me more traumatic than any combat experience I ever had, emotionally, physically, up front, because of the anger and rage I felt with what they were doing to me. I ended up getting blood clots, which I don't have a proclivity for. And I had an embolism, the type of which should have killed me, but didn't. I was in ICU for 4 days, and then I had to end up going through my own therapeutic intensive in order to recover from this, to kind of stay in the game here, to keep on going with my campaign and for my own self-care. Because part of the problem was the two big mistakes I made up front is I didn't build a network of support before I actually took this on. And I really didn't, employ the kinds of self-care types of interventions I should have done to make sure that, that I was going to be, in a mentally, emotionally healthy frame of mind.
Put the squeeze on you, as it were.
So it was intense. And this is what whistleblowers typically go through because of these types of tactics that are employed against those that speak truth to power for reasons I explained before.
Yeah. Hey, I want everybody to take a look. This is not a man to skip on. Real quick, before I go on to that, you mentioned that you're on the board of, repeat that again. So if anybody's out there and you may need to reach out to Ted, get some advice. Ted learned the hard way, as it were, but he's how can I put it? You're a very meticulous man, and great resilience. What's that board again that you're on?
Okay, it's Whistleblowers of America, founded by Jackie Garrick, who was an Army captain back in the day, who was a social worker, ended up working for DOD, and ended up reporting DOD, I believe, for or maybe even the VA, having to do with misappropriation of funds that were set aside for high-risk veterans for suicide, and she ended up winning her case. But she founded Whistleblowers of America. I work very closely with her, and she's been a great support along with the organization over the last 6 years with me. And just about 6 months ago, asked me to be on her board of directors because I've been very supportive of the organization. We have annual conferences every year in DC where we have different programs, to help whistleblowers, to get the sense of what they need to do legally, the kinds of things they need to, figure out strategies, what to expect so they're not caught off guard like I was, not having that support up front when I first took that on. So that helps get them in the right modality. And one of the big things we're doing this year is we have someone coming in from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology to go through an experiential piece our last afternoon of our conference in September this year to how to self-regulate and the interventions that are effective, cutting edge, quite frankly, in dealing with trauma and the impact from whistleblower retaliation in particular. So it's going to be tailored just for that. So
that's deep, Ted. That is seriously
something
deep.
We've never done before.
I never even thought about that.
But the parallel track of what the purpose of this is, besides the self-care for whistleblowers, is to get legislation sponsored by politicians in Washington that truly protects and supports whistleblowers. And so that's really the main focus, along with the peer-to-peer support and certification process we have for people to do that, to help whistleblowers navigate the landmines that come about as a result of taking on these kinds of crusades. Man.
And now this had an effect not just on you. Did it also have an effect on your family and your loved ones?
Oh my God. Yes. So that's the other part of the answer to your question about the impact. So the impact of me, I had just mentioned, I was in a very deep, dark place, but psychosocially, it affected my family. I was emotionally unavailable to them, withdrawing for a good few years because of, because of the impact it was having on me.
Right.
The reasons I explained, not going to family functions, I just staying by myself. So that impacted them because of not being available to them. It affected my colleagues across the nation who kept in touch with me. A lot of them off the VA.gov grid that gave me a lot of support and documents that I needed to continue on with the campaign to have the effect it finally did with the legislation passed in Congress, so I alluded to before. But it scared them to death because they're afraid of losing their jobs. That's why when I took this on and I'm looking around, crossing the line of departure to go into battle with this whole thing, I'm there like, where is everybody? They all ran for the tall grass because they're afraid of losing their jobs because of witnessing what happened to me. They were afraid that they were going to get retaliated against. So that caused some people to disassociate from me, that further isolated me, but that's part of their tactics. And to discredit you and to discourage you, to making the price too high to pay, for you to keep these kinds of things on. And that's what they hope happens, which in a lot of cases does.
Imagine so. Cases, eventually, yes, somebody will just back down.
People not even taking it on, number one, the majority, but even the few that do, at some point, they're gonna throw in the towel along the way. And admittedly, I almost did a few times. I mean, it was brutal.
What kept you going then? I mean, we could all guess, but
for me, what it really came down to is I have an energetic archetype coming into the.
I was trying to keep a straight face. You have an energetic archetype.
Of coming when I came into this world.
I love it.
That basically it's a provider, it's a caretaker, it's a hero archetype, not in an egoistic kind of way. That the undercurrent of which that drives it is a strong sense of justice and a strong sense of fairness. And I've always felt very deeply about that. And when there's any kind of injustice going on for me or anybody else, like the veterans and the counselors in the system at the VA and what was happening to them, that just drove me to hang in there just for that sense of justice and fairness. It needed to be corrected because to me, that was more important than anything. And I was consumed with that because of that for these last several years.
And if you had to say your bubble of support, just round it off, less than 100 people?
My bubble of support started out really with only two people, two of my
Wow.
colleagues at the vet center I worked with who had the courage to support me, even at staff meetings after I left.
They spoke up even in front
And
of others.
yep, and on the side with me, a tremendous support for me
Wow.
and giving me intel along the way I
Yeah.
needed to know. And frankly, had it not been for those two people,
Hmm.
I'm not even sure I'd be here today. They were instrumental in me really being so close to me and at that vet center, validating me by
Hmm.
supporting me on the side. And if I didn't have that from those two, being in the deep, dark place I was initially with all this, it would have been a rough road to hoe. And I honestly, I don't know if I'd still be here if it wasn't for the two of them. But then the others, counselors, 57 counselors before they shut off my computer, 57 of them within that first 36 hours, I went out with that email. 57 counselors from 42 different vet centers in 25 different states, or it would have been in the hundreds had they
Oh
not
yeah.
shut off
Oh
my
yeah.
computer.
It would have just kept growing.
Yes. So there was a good 7 to 10 of those that stood with me for a good few years, giving me documents, checking on me to make sure I'm okay, because they really understood, the impact that it was having on me. So, so they did. But as you can see, that's very few in number.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they have their own fear
Hey,
of retaliation
they
for
cut
jobs.
that off. They cut you off real
Yeah.
quick before you started a
Oh yeah.
snowball effect on
Right.
everything. I'm going to
Right.
get to I want to put some things up on the screen. You just run with it. I'm going to mention a few things. They're all, your words and from your LinkedIn. Everybody just hold on here for a second. Let me get back over here. And before we get to the book review real quick, I just want to share this with everybody. Please support Ted on his LinkedIn page. It gives you an overview right there. I'm going to scroll a little bit if you're reading it, but for those who are listening in, it mentions, and this is a part of this paragraph here, the top part there, the A part of that paragraph. It says, during this process, toxic and distressing retaliation tactics were used by VA management in attempts to silence me and other employees, which you were just highlighting. These tactics, now correct me, Ted, you're the professional, you're the clinical professional. Did it create a PTSD thing for you, or how would you describe it?
Oh, absolutely.
For the layman mental health, people
Right.
don't understand therapy. You're the professional. Give us an idea, because maybe they're going through that, but they're not dealing with the VA. But go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely you suffer from PTSD. I mean, it's a type of battle, against, um, you know, non-military
Hmm.
types of an enemy, if you will. You're dealing with non-combatants, but it's very combative and it's very
Got it.
traumatizing
I get you.
because of the way you are cut off, the way you are disregarded, the way you are basically castigated and gaslighted to the point where they make up everything they can with counter accusations,
Hmm.
to make you appear to be guilty of something you're not in order to discredit you. So it's a total betrayal. It's a total, moral injustice, and the impact that it has, in cutting you off from virtually everything, having people turned against you as your colleagues, for fear of retaliation themselves. It just puts you in a position where you don't belong. It puts you in a position where you don't fit in. It puts you in a position where, what do you do with this?
What
You're
do you do? Where
totally
you go?
lost.
Yeah, who you talk to?
Where do you go and who do you talk to?
Yeah, man.
And so that's why it's important to build a network of support up front before you launch off with this kind of thing. And that's where Whistleblowers of America comes in, because
Hmm.
they help you strategize, first of all, to be aware of what are the things you're going to be facing, what are the steps you need to do, and oh, by the way, the peer-to-peer support they offer, so you're not going it alone,
Got it.
because that sense of belonging that you no longer have when they do this, you got to reestablish that support where people are behind you and validating you, because when the retaliation kicks in, they totally try to strip that away from you and totally invalidate you, totally to a point of making you appear totally worthless. It's horrible.
You have your book review. Excuse me, one second. Book review and description that I have up on the screen. I'm losing my voice now. excuse me, Ted. It mentions a little bit about your background. I'm gonna move down a little bit to this section here. It says broken promises is not just an expose of the wrongdoings within the VA. It is a vivid portrayal of the personal toll whistleblowing can take on individuals and their families. You touched on that for us. Some of the struggles you went through are very, very important.
Right. And
But
what
you
I
were
want
consumed about the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say before I go ahead.
No, I just
Please.
want to interject here because it's really important. So the reason I wrote the book, and this is very important, is so
Hmm.
there is a record out there of these kinds of things happening and how they happen, not just the issues I specifically raised with the VA and how the metrics were burning out councils, hurting the welfare and compromising
Hmm.
quality mental health care for veterans, but I also went into depth on the types of specific tactics which I named before, like the gaslighting, the counter
Yeah.
accusing, and all
Hmm.
those kinds of things, because those are specific tactics. It's standard operating procedure when you speak truth to power. These are the things they do. And then I went into depth personally on the impact it had on me so the public can be aware of the type of things to expect, how people are affected in doing the right thing,
Yeah.
and how courageous it really is for someone, because most people have no clue about that. And
Hmm.
so as I navigate through that process and the different things that happen chronologically along the way, and finally, you know, David beating Goliath, because
Hmm.
this ended up in congressional legislation because of what I did to hold the VA accountable. And now the focus to ensure that they comply with the legislation, which is why I've continued to deal with the Veterans Affairs Committee on the House and Senate side in Washington, among other things like with veteran service organizations to support that effort in Washington. But I then capstone the book at the very end with a blueprint
Hmm.
on, if you take on these kinds of campaigns, these kinds of crusades, here's what you need to do. 9 or 10 things
Awesome.
that are very
Yeah.
important in order to have the maximum effectiveness with the most favorable outcome possible, to give whistleblowers a sense of hope that you can beat the system, that you can be successful, that it is possible. And here I am, I did it. Here I share my story. It's possible for you and anyone out there to do the same thing.
Right.
Just don't make the mistakes I did up front, and make sure you take care of your self-care and build a network of support up front. And those are two of the things I mentioned right up front in order to be successful. Those are paramount. And of course, having the politicians and the media thing going on at the same time, because they got to work in tandem, because the politicians will pay attention more if the media is involved, especially something like I did at a national level. You get national media attention, they're going to pay attention. Because when I walked into Senator Reid's office, July of 2019 for that first appointment to lay this whole thing out with his staff, NBC was following me into his
Hmm.
office, and believe me, that got their attention. They listened.
Did you get a lot of positive support overall from the media? Yeah.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. When it comes to the broken promises review and book description here, um, if you don't mind, I'm going to read this part, and I know you're going to take it well because it's written about you. But I just love the way it's written. It was written by Jacob Mendez, reviewed by Jacob Mendez. It says, in Broken Promises, Lieutenant Colonel Ted Blinkwaddell, I did say your name correctly, right?
Look
I
better,
practiced.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Emerges not just as a whistleblower, but as a hero of our time, embodying the ideals of courage, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Can really see the justice and your sense of justice oozing from you every time we've spoken. And I really appreciate that about you. It goes on to say this book is an essential read for anyone interested in veterans affairs, mental health advocacy, and the power of the individual against seemingly insurmountable odds. It is a powerful reminder of the cost of service and the enduring strength of the human spirit. What makes you wake up in the morning? Your sense of justice?
Yeah, well, knowing that I did the right thing because of my sense of justice and fairness which needs to happen across the board. And, my piece with the VA, as we spoke about on this program, is one aspect of many campaigns that are out there to do the same thing, to get a sense of justice. And it's the people, the whistleblowers that stand up, that take a stand to speak truth to power for whatever issues they're addressing, is impeccable. And I suspect that a lot of these people have a strong sense of justice and fairness that motivates them much in the same way it did me.
You have your website, and that's what I have up on the screen for everybody to look at now. Please go to the website, and I'm going to put my arrow over here. This section right here that says order now, put the pizza down. Everybody knows how I am about that. Put the pizza down and instead buy the book, buy one for a friend, give it as a gift to a veteran or his family or family members. The treatment that individuals were receiving. I just want to touch on that a little bit before we end the show. Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to do some more together. I have some projects in mind that we can do together with other veterans that are interested and are going to see this, if not watching now, that want to meet with you. When it comes, because they have their own story.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. We're not going to get into it right now, but you know what I mean? We'll talk more off camera. But what I was going to say is just a little bit, give people an idea of what veterans were going through and what you were fighting about.
So what happened, and I heard from other counselors throughout the system as well, some of the things I observed is the veterans are very astute. They picked up that things were getting more tense, in the vet centers they were going to, and the stress and pressure that, counselors were under. They could just feel it in the air. They could sense it, from other counselors. And some of them got a sense that because of these new metrics and the visit counts and people having to limit their time they were spending with veterans in session, they felt that they were a number. And I addressed this in the book because there was interviews done with vet center clients and counselors and vet center directors. And there's a whole collage of things when you pull it together that I mentioned in the book, and how veterans came away feeling, they were just a number. They weren't necessarily being given the attention they needed. And things after I left have even gotten worse. I found out from counselors, because now they're restricting in one-on-one visits with veterans at the vet centers from 8 to 12 visits. And after that, they have to be referred out. So, if you have long-term clients or clients, veteran clients that need to have, more time with someone because of PTSD or complex PTSD, which, you're not going to deal with, in just 8 to 12 sessions, well, then that becomes an ethical issue of therapeutic abandonment. And, just to give you an example of how this evolved. So this is why it was important, what I did to get this legislation passed to hold the VA accountable. So these kinds of things and these poor policies, get redone, get modified. So this does not continue with the impunity that it has.
What got you into the mental health field, Ted?
Being a combat veteran myself, having seen how other veterans have been impacted, by their experiences in war or even other experiences that have been traumatic, not even necessarily war related. I wanted to be involved in addressing those therapeutically because of issues I had both in the military and before the military that culminated with things I did to work on myself. I wanted to be able to give back and do that for others, and particularly the veteran community, having been a veteran, a combat veteran myself.
Yeah. Now, you specialize, make sure I get this right, in PTSD. That's something you also know quite well to help others with. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
Yes.
This is a discussion that we could have at another time. But when it comes to PTSD, there are some people, mainly a lot of the newer generation, they have no idea. Maybe that's what a relative, father, son, brother, whatever, is going through. Just real quick, can you touch on what is PTSD?
Well, post-traumatic PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, A lot of people to coin it in a more positive way will also use the term, also as someone is navigating through this and making strides in healing, they also refer to it as post traumatic growth. So it's very important to also realize that well, frankly, in chapter 10 of my book, I address PTSD, what it is, the history, and then the last part of chapter 10, I deal with treatment. And I do a basic analysis of the research with conventional approaches in dealing with trauma. What are the most effective ones? And the most effective ones that I've run across have to do with energy psychology, emotional freedom techniques. That's a whole discussion for another show. But I actually point out at the end of my chapter 10, how dare the VA not promote this as evidence-based interventions. That's basically the cutting edge in dealing with trauma. How dare they? I also call them out on for not having this promoted as evidence-based for veterans getting services at the VA. It's in fact,
I love your energy. I just really do. I seriously,
and
man.
and in fact, next
Yeah.
week I'm going to be in Arizona for a week-long
Yes.
conference, an energy psychology conference for the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology. Because in chapter 10, I mentioned their website. I mentioned some other websites where veterans can go to and research this stuff and look at the kinds of things they can do and tap into to get the kind of cutting edge interventions they need to deal with their own PTSD. So I mentioned that in these websites in chapter 10 of my book as well.
Are you going to be putting some of that information on your website as well, where people can tap into
No,
stuff?
that's beyond the scope of my website.
Got it. Okay.
But it is in the book in chapter 10 of my book.
Was there something else you were going to put on your website? Maybe I misunderstood you when we were talking earlier. No. No.
Again, there may be.
Okay.
But I think what I have on is pretty much it.
So there are resources there that individuals can look to
in chapter 10
of the book.
My book.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Everybody, please make sure, I'm going to do this again here, put that up there. Make sure you get Broken Promises. Make sure you get your hand on the book. Let's see. I got Broken Promises all across the screen there. You cannot forget it. Ted, you have done a before. This is your before and after. I made it up. Don't you just go with it. I see you smiling, but also just go with it. Before and after. Before you were a whistleblower, you had a life going in a certain direction. Then you became a whistleblower. You're glad you made that decision, correct?
I'm glad looking back, I'm glad I made the decision. But if I knew what I knew now, having gone through the experience, I'm not so sure what I would do again if I had to do it all over, because I paid a heavy price as well as my colleagues and family. So, it's a balancing act. I would like to say that I would have made the same choice, especially because of the outcome I had.
The legislation and
the legislation
the
and
impact,
everything, because the impact that it had is going to help thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So, in the end, it was worth it. And it's I probably would do it again, but it would be a tougher decision just because of knowing what I know with the price that you pay when you do it.
I learned a lot about you as a man. You're a husband. But you have an amazing sense of humor as well. For example, you just let me know something before the show started. Actually, you let me know a couple of things. I said, no, save it for the show. So I'm going to try to see if I can recall them. Everybody's going like, put the camera on. I want to see him laughing because he was so serious before. So he's got a great sense of humor, you guys. Trust me. He really, really does. And you'll find more about his sense of humor if we get a chance to do more together. But you told me your wife is how tall?
5 feet.
But
as a joke, when other people may ask, oh yeah, so how tall is your wife? Well, to make it seem like she's shorter than 5 feet, I say, oh, she's 4'12". Oh, 4'12"? Because when you have the 4 in there, 4 sounds shorter than 5. So when you say 412, it's the same thing as 5, but at the surface of it, it makes it almost sound like 412 is shorter than 5 feet.
That sounds like a very logical answer. She should still punch you for saying that she's 412. Anyhow,
Yeah, she's had a few comments here and there.
she's had a few comments. Yeah, you better sleep with one eye open over a comment like that. My mother was 5 feet taller. My father would have never said that. He was only 5'7". But I shouldn't say only. Now I'm going to get hate mail from people 5'7". Anyhow, what I was going to say is, you touched on about meditating before the show started. Can you delve in that just a little bit before we go?
Yes, and that all was your audience needs to know was brought about because of you referring to me as a unicorn, because I can't hear my own voice in my headphones, and it's kind of like, oh, you're a unicorn, because just about everybody else has difficulty with that. Well,
this is true.
And so Paxton asked me, well, how is it then that you can do that? Well, because for me, it's a meditation kind of thing. From having meditated so much and going within and being in that calm, deep, serene place at the core of being, you're there as the silent witness, observing everything instead of being caught up in it. So it puts me in a place where I may not hear my voice through my headset, but I can hear it externally to the headset. So as I'm watching it, to me, it's all the same thing. It's all interconnected. So I don't need to be hearing it through my headset.
I like you. I really, really like you. I wish you were my neighbor. I would be bothering you all the time. I'd sit on a porch and talk to you forever. Your brain and your thoughts really intrigue me. I like that so much. A silent witness, as it were, you say. So how can that technique help someone if they're dealing with, maybe it can't, but just go with my weird question here. How can that technique help someone if they're dealing with gaslighting or smear campaign or PTSD or anything like that? How can that technique help them to stay grounded?
Because you're not getting caught up with your emotions and your thoughts associated with the impact of being traumatized. And so when you're in that space, centered and grounded, where you can now be watching what's going on out here. It's like being the eye of the hurricane, the calm of the storm.
Okay.
You're in that calm, still center, but all the turbulence going on around you. Now you're in a position to be prior to it, to be that silent witness watching it. And whenever you're able to watch it and not being attached to it, that light of your awareness then will allow that darkness to dissolve. And it is a practice. It's not something that necessarily happens overnight. You've really got to do the right type of meditation, not just any kind of meditation. And there's a way of doing that. I've done various meditation programs since over the last 20 years that have been very helpful in that process. If you remember to do it in the moment and not get caught up in it, because then you have to catch yourself, because once you're in it and caught up, it's kind of hard. It's hard to pull out of it. Okay. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Hey, we got to talk about that some more, but you dropped that little bit of information and knowledge before, that little nugget before we started, and I wanted you to share that with everybody.
I can even do a program sometime where I can do a guided piece with your audience.
Consider it done.
And take them through that process and how
good is done.
So
I love it.
They can feel that.
Love it. We're gonna work that out. We're gonna stay connected without a doubt. I really, really enjoyed this with you today, and I appreciate you being here. We're going to go, everybody. This is not our only show for the day, but I wanted to start the morning off with Ted, and which will get us going in the right direction. And thank you for that last nugget of information. Please make sure you buy the book, Broken Promises. Make sure that you put the pizza down, and I'll put it up there 50 billion times. Make sure you get Broken Promises many times over. Get one as a gift to someone. Make sure you put your hands on that book.
And the best way to do that too is for them to be able to have my website.
Yes, without a doubt.
In view too, but it's www.VA as in Victor Alpha. It stands for Veterans Affairs. Breaking Promises. That's promises with an S.com. VA breakingpromises.com is where it talks more about the book and the links where you can buy it through. That takes you right to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. It's the best way pay to do it. Or you Google it, on Amazon, your Broken Promises with my name. You can find it that way as well.
Please make sure you Google it or go to the website to get his book. I would appreciate it if you go through those two avenues, as Ted just mentioned, to put your hands on the book. Ted, we're going to go for now. I'm going to let you go ahead and exit the studio. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon again. You were awesome. You were really awesome.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to tell everybody right now, this man's a pro right here. I don't know how long it took him to be, but you're just naturally a pro. And of course, you've been speaking in front of a number of people about this. I really appreciate you a great deal. Everybody, show some support and love for this man. He's got a great deal of passion, and he can help a lot of veterans. So if you got a veteran in your family, if you have a friend that's a veteran, make sure that they get a copy of this book, even if you get it for them as a gift for the entire family, so they can become more aware of what's taking place and the many different resources that are available to them in Chapter 10 of Broken Promises. All right, Ted, I'll see you later. Thanks, my friend. I'm going to talk to the audience for a little bit.
Okay.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me. Take care.
Anytime, my friend. All right, everybody. Gentle reminder.